Today we're joined by Rich Ortega, COO and co-owner of On the Rock Services.
I'm actually third generation in the food service industry.
What was a moment where you felt like this industry really kicked you in the butt?
I said, I think I could do this better myself. And a bunch of experienced people got in my head and said, yeah, you could do this better yourself.
If you are committed to being excellent, that is going to distinguish you quickly.
If you can't be trusted to latch doors on an HVAC unit, then how can we trust you to replace an entire HVAC unit? Do the work, pick up the extra calls, talk to the more experienced technicians. That's how you pursue excellence in this industry.
Hey guys, welcome to The Dispatch, where job site legends get the mic. Join me every other Thursday as I sit down with the biggest names in the trades to find out what's really happening to keep America running. So whether you're on the road or in the garage, beer in hand, settle in for a great conversation. I'm Ryan Prosser, and this is The Dispatch. Welcome back to The Dispatch, where job site legends get the mic. Today we're joined by Rich Ortega, COO and co-owner of On the Rock Services and co-host of Commercial Kitchen Chronicles. Rich has spent over 2 decades in the trade, specializing in commercial kitchen equipment, from cooking lines and refrigeration to HVAC systems that keep restaurants running. Rich, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So, Rich, pretty rich. Well, I play on words there, I guess, pun intended. Rich, that's a rich background. For folks that don't know, give us a little bit more on you and your show.
So like I said, I've been roughly 20 years in the commercial food service maintenance repairs industry. A couple years back, I decided to start my own company, On the Rock Services, out of Greenville, South Carolina. Really just that was fueled by the desire to do things right and treat people right. I didn't like the way a lot of these big corporations were treating customers. So I said, I think I could do this better myself. And a bunch of experienced people got in my head and said, yeah, you could do this better yourself. Do it. And then in that same time frame, I met Pat Finley on LinkedIn, and he was hosting his Commercial Kitchen Chronicles podcast, and we became friends. He asked me to jump on there and co-host it with him and Jason, and I think that's why I'm here today now. A mix of all of that
Cool,
stuff.
man. I'm curious about how you got your start. What's your origin story? How did you land on food service as a specialization area?
So I'm actually third generation in the food service industry. My dad and my granddad were both technicians. They had a shop where they sold fixed, or I should say fixed and sold restaurant equipment. And I basically just started out working for them. They both did hot side, and they needed somebody to learn cold side because they were getting screwed either by, trying to sub out the work or trying to network with other people. So when I came on board, I'm like, well, crap, let me learn this refrigeration stuff. And then it just grew from there.
I love it. So, I guess you would say family business is
Yeah,
the short
exactly.
answer. I love it. So, HVAC in the last 25 years has it, for folks that don't know and maybe don't care, was really private equity's first attempt to like roll up trades. The world had never quite seen anything like this before. And there are some big guys out there in HVAC in ways that you don't necessarily see in other corners of the trades. What you've been in this, for a couple decades, like you said. What's been your observation? Watching this industry go through, some evolution there.
Um, it's interesting to say the least, right? 20 years ago, you had big guys, and then you had obviously your mom and pops, but it seemed like for the most part, the big guys were they were still independent. They were just, this company has 38 branches across this region, and this other company has 15 in this area or whatever. But basically now, with the way private equity is rolling in our industry, it's almost like maybe 3 or 4 people own almost everybody. And from a technician side, and now from a small business owner side, I don't hate on private equity. They've got their role. I don't hate on anybody who's sold to private equity, but it's changing the industry in a way that I don't think is beneficial to customers or to, technicians long term. When you start consolidating into just 3 or 4 major players, they get to make all the rules. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
I don't hate on private equity like a lot of people do. If you're on LinkedIn, you hear people cussing private equity all day long. I just think there's a better way to do stuff than the route they tend to go.
So, just a background for the audience that is saying, yo, I just graduated from HVAC school. I have no idea what private equity is. 10 seconds on this is, you got, let's say, 5 or 10 extremely wealthy individual people. They pool $200 million into a bucket and give it to a finance firm. And they go start buying HVAC companies across the country and kind of like imagine chewing gum. Take a piece of chewing gum, stick it on another piece of chewing gum, keep sticking other pieces of chewing gum till you got like a giant tennis ball shaped, thing of chewing gum all kind of stuck together. It's not they're all the same color, same whatever, but now they're all kind of one thing. Um, that's sort of the model. And financially, that makes some sense. The people that own the HVAC company, it makes some sense for them. But I think, Rich, your point is the end customer is not always the winner there.
Yeah, they're definitely not. And I mean, an example of that is, there's a few companies in my industry that are known as like the warranty company. They have all the manufacturer connections and they do warranty work for, I don't know, 80, 90% of every manufacturer out there. And a lot of times their techs may not be the greatest, their practices may not be the most honest, but because they've created these conglomerates, manufacturers, and this is things that manufacturers have told me flat out is we'd like to leave these companies, but they almost bully them into staying with them because they're like, well, if you drop us in one area, we'll drop you in every other market, and then you leave a manufacturer, screwed on the back end, with nobody to cover service. Because, for example, if they want to put me in place in Greenville, then whatever big company will drop them the rest of the country. So again, it's a loss for the customer, right? Because a manufacturer may not want to put a smaller company in as an authorized agency, but now that market is so behind that a customer's waiting 3, 4, 5 weeks for a warranty call, but it's only because manufacturers are being bullied by some of these companies. So that's
Yeah,
one
it's
example.
interesting. Like size is both not your friend and occasionally there's a convenience factor to it. I'm curious, what's Rich Ortega's view on, you're just coming out of HVAC school, you're ready to get your start. Like, how does a person know if they should, they've got three different kind of opportunities in front of them, let's say. One is a big private equity owned megacorp that they've got 500 field service techs in a bunch of different geographies, whatever. They're a big company. The second one is, I'll call it mom and pop plus. So like they've been in business for, they're still under their original ownership. They're bigger, but they're not that big. They got
Mhm.
25 field service techs, been in business 30 years, whatever. And then the last one is, a small shop. They kind of service a really narrow geography, but they're gonna have 3 to 5 technicians, but like you're a part of something smaller in good ways and bad ways. What's your take? What would you advise somebody just getting started in their career? Which one of those do you think, or how would they know which one is most attractive for them?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. And the thing is, right, either one of those can be a fantastic opportunity, or either one of those can be completely trash. If it was me starting out, today with all the social media and everything we have going on, first thing I would do is jump online, especially in Facebook. There's a ton of groups for HVAC technicians, refrigeration techs, commercial kitchen techs, and then just jump in there and honestly ask, say, hey, I'm looking at employment with this company, that company, and the other company. Now, the mom and pops may not be known, but if you have a larger company, um, that's say owned by private equity, or they're just a huge company, I'm looking for feedback working for that company. Most people will give you very honest feedback, and what you want to look for is which company does it seem will give you the most opportunity for growth. Because unfortunately, a lot of companies will hire you and they want to keep you stuck, for their benefit, which I mean, obviously it makes sense, right? If I hire you for a position, it's because I need that position filled. But you need to be able to grow. So you want to find out really what is the growth trajectory in any company. And another thing that I'll throw out there, which is, most employers don't want to say this, but the truth is, it's okay to start one place today and leave in 6 months for something better. And I'm not even saying just to chase a dollar, but if you realize after you work somewhere, hey, I think this is the wrong choice. They don't offer training, they don't offer any incentive to grow. There's no support. jump to the next place that's offering that until you find the place that will, not only promise you a good trajectory, but will back it up. For us, we actually have I have a career path that we have laid out, and you can start from what we call a support technician, which is our entry level. You don't know jack about anything, so you're just going to help and you're going to learn and you're going to train. We have a career path from that to, as we expand, potentially running a branch, being a regional director or something of that nature. So look for companies that have that, and then as you get involved in that company, look for the proof that they've actually helped people go down that career path.
When younger guys are asking you for advice, one of the things that we'll see, I hear a lot when we have people on the show is the older guys will be like, man, listen, don't leave for 2 extra bucks an hour or whatever the case is. You want to leave for what is the company that's going to invest in you as a professional, because ultimately that will pay much more than $2 an hour difference.
Yeah.
What's your take on, like, at what point does somebody start to say, okay, I am now ready to just totally prioritize my earnings because I'm at a place where I really have mastered the craft. Like, do you ever get to that place? Is it always about prioritizing learning, or is there a point where one gives way to the other one?
That's a good question. I don't think you should prioritize or make earnings your main focus until you're at a place where basically you're the man. You know what I mean? Like, I've got friends that are working for companies making $50 plus an hour, working 60 plus hours a week. You know what I mean? They're banking almost 200 grand a year, but they've been doing this. Not only have they been doing this for 20 plus years, but I mean, like, they're literally the man. Like, any company they go to, they're easily going to turn into the guy that everybody goes to, the guy that gets everybody, bails everybody out and does all the big stuff. Um, so as long as a company is investing in you, you're able to incrementally get raises, that are fair and reasonable. Then I would say stick with the company that is helping you grow, and don't just jump for money. Because I've seen the reverse. I've seen people that completely, um, suck at this work or have just no experience, or very limited experience, and they want to keep jumping. Well, if you keep jumping, you're never going to learn. And okay, you might start at $18, let's say, for example, with a company, and then another company in 6 months offers you 19, so you jump. Then another company offers you 20 for you jump. Well, at some point, you're going to hit, $22 an hour. And because you never actually learned anything, you're going to be stuck at $22. Where if you would have taken the time to learn, you'd be at 30, 35 or more, over the course of time. So until you're like, yeah, I'm good at what I'm doing, I'm the man, I know what it is, I don't say chase earnings as long as what you're earning is reasonable for your market and for the work that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's I'm curious, in your journey, like, what was a moment where you felt like this industry really kicked you in the butt, and you were like, I am now tackling hard problems that are pushing me to my absolute limit and beyond. Like, what did that look like for you? And to what extent, do you feel like that's what these young bucks should be trying to push for themselves, like, because that's where growth comes from, but it's also scary.
I mean, for me, I feel like it just happened. I don't know when or where or how. Like, I showed up every day, what I mean, doing what I could do, and then next thing I know, people above me are trusting me to do more than sometimes I thought I was, capable of, or I thought there were better people to do the job. So I don't know, like I said, I don't know when or where exactly that happened, but what I will say is, and this is something I tell people all the time, people, no matter how, new or how long you've been in the industry, I, to me, that comes from doing small things well consistently. And I always use the example, right? If you cut a zip tie when you're tracing wires, replace the zip tie. If you drop a screw, go to your truck, get another screw, replace the screw. Little stupid things like that that are insignificant, you know what I mean, in the big picture. When you consistently do them, it builds something in you to where you become naturally more thorough and naturally more thoughtful in what you're doing. And then the progression from doing stupid little things like that well to being put in the big positions where you're like, how the hell did I even get trusted with this? It's just a natural thing because over time, the habits you developed cause people to trust your abilities. And even if it's not that they 100% trust your technical ability, or that they're 100% confident in your ability to solve that particular issue, they at least know there's not going to be insignificant or stupid reasons why it didn't work out. You know what I mean? Like, I was working at a place one time, and we got a call to go back to a place after a PM crew was done. And when we get there, it's like all the doors on the HVAC units, they didn't latch any of them. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you can't be trusted to latch doors on an HVAC unit, then how can we trust you to replace an entire HVAC unit? So it's just stupid things like that. That is like, if you become consistent in doing or stupid things really well, you'll just naturally be trusted in the bigger things. But if you never develop the habit of doing stupid things well, nobody's ever going to trust you to do anything big.
Man, I just totally agree, and it resonates with me. I'll tell you a habit that I somebody recommended this a few years ago. I picked it up, and it's been big for me. I so the thing was, if something's going to take you less than 3 minutes to do, do it right then.
Mhm.
So like if you see the thing around the house, this is like an around the house thing, not necessarily a professional thing, and it has like unlocked all of this, I don't know, positive momentum in my life, because it includes making my bed. So
Yeah.
like, I mean, I don't make it like a, necessarily like a military drill sergeant would require, but it looks pretty decent. And so it's just brought a lot of order and this sense of momentum to my day,
Mhm.
where I don't let things build up. And it seems like you're saying, hey, look, take care of the small thing right then and there. You're definitely not going to remember it later,
Right.
and it's hard to explain why it's important, but you do it and you can see, wow, this unlocks like, it's almost like you can't become excellent at the big stuff if you're not banging out the small stuff right then and there.
Exactly. And then the thing is too, at least when you apply it in the field, like what I'm talking about, you don't necessarily feel the I guess you could call it the reward or whatever right then and there. You know what I mean? Especially when you're like, it's just some stupid wires. I want to get the hell out of here. Why do I gotta zip tie them? Why do I gotta go to my truck, get another screw, and come back? But then when you return to that job site and you see how nice and professional you left everything, um, that's kind of when you get that reward feeling of like, man, I'm doing really well. One of the things I'm big on is, I tell my guys, I'm like, if you go on a rooftop, clean off the rooftop. I don't care if we left the mess or not. Sometimes we'll go run a service call, and all the belts that were changed, people threw the old belts, all over the roof, or old parts are still up there. And I'm like, I don't care if we're getting paid for it or not. Clean off the roof, throw the parts in the trash, whether they're ours or not. And if we've been up there, one, I don't want anybody to climb up the roof after us and think that we trashed it. But two, when you go back afterwards, or when you're climbing off that ladder, you look around, you're like, you take ownership. You're like, yeah, this is ours. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't ours when we got up here, but it's ours now. And then I feel like not I feel like I've seen that kind of create a natural desire to do better work when you start taking ownership over stuff like that.
Tell me if you, to what extent you agree with this. One of the things I've heard is integrity is doing the right thing even when you don't think anyone's looking. And what I've observed in my career and life is people are looking much more often than I realize. So like I think, hey, I'm doing the right thing even though no one's looking, but people are looking.
Mhm.
And I come and people are like, hey, you didn't know I was watching, but I saw you do this the right way, and that's why I like working with you, I like working for you, whatever the case is. Has that been your experience as well?
Oh yeah, 100%. Matter of fact, like even recently, a couple months back, I had ran into a regional for a restaurant that we service, and when we picked up the account, I had met with him to talk about our company, what we do, how we operate, and all of that stuff. And that was probably the only conversation me and him had until, like I said, recently, a couple months back. And he stops me to tell me, he's like, I just want to tell you, you guys are everything you said you were. He was like, you told me you guys do this is how you operate, this is how you communicate. And he's like, I just have to point out, you are the only company who's ever pitched to me and has been exactly what you guys claim to be. And for me, that was kind of like, holy crap, that's awesome. But whenever I talk to the managers in the place, yeah, we update them, we let them know what's going on. But I never saw that it was to the point to where they're going back to him and saying, We love On the Rock services. These guys are great. You know what I mean? We trust these guys basically blindly. You know what I mean? So yeah, so even though in my mind they were just being updated on what's going on and we're taking care of their stuff, yeah, they're actually going back up the chain saying how great we are, how much they love us, without us even realizing it. So yeah.
So I want to ask you a couple questions about high pressure environments, but I would characterize the topic we're on now as excellence.
Mhm.
And the my message to the young bucks out there, especially ones that like football. I'll tell you. So I live in Bozeman, Montana. Montana State is in Bozeman. It's our local college here. They just won the FCS national championship. So that's the level right below the big boys, and they were definitely definitely going to lose this game, the national championship. They were playing Illinois State, school most people probably never heard of, but whatever. It's national championship at that level. And Illinois State has the ball on the 25-yard line. They're going to win the game. And it's tie game, 20 seconds left. And and listen, I know this just college kids. I shouldn't pick on them, but their field goal kicker could not be trusted to sink a game winning field goal from the 25-yard line. And it struck me, and I wanted to say this to the audience. I think, Rich, you would agree. Excellence is much more rare than people think it is.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is a national championship caliber team that doesn't trust their field goal kicker to sink a championship winner from the 25-yard line, which I think we can all agree,
Mhm.
not a very long field goal by today's standards.
Yep.
And so, Rich, you tell me to the extent you agree. To the young bucks out there, if you are committed to being excellent at what you're doing, that is going to distinguish you quickly. Yeah, it is very rare. Most people, even at the national championship level, can't do their thing at an excellent level. And if you're committed to that, it's going to take you far. Rich Ortega, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, you would think that's common sense, and maybe it is, but since common sense itself is so rare, you're just not seeing it anymore. But I mean, if you talk to anybody who's done anything great, I mean, it started with it being intentional, being committed, and just desiring to be great. In this industry, that looks like, um, you know, never saying no to a service call. I mean, and I'm not, going to get into the whole work life balance thing. That's a whole nother subject. But I'm saying, you know, do the work, pick up the extra calls, talk to the more experienced technicians, put yourself out there to learn what's going on. And if you do that, that's how you pursue excellence in this industry. And then again, when you're doing that, when it's a high pressure situation, you're going to be the one that they go to. And right now, the way the industry sits, that is worth a whole lot of money.
It's funny. The senior people in this industry are as close to kind of a Superman mentality as you're likely to see anywhere. I mean that in the sense of Clark Kent is doing his thing, but when duty calls, you got to step into the phone booth, you got to put on the cape, you got to get to work, and then Clark Kent doesn't get any thanks for that
Right.
because it's just the job. He's not allowed to necessarily even reveal who he is. And you see these quiet everyday heroes in this space,
Mhm.
um, and, and what you don't see is a lot of ego. What you don't see is a lot of guys saying, I want to spike to football, be the center of attention. It's just kind of a hard hat, get it done. This is the job. Take pride in doing it really well. Industry. What's your take on that?
Yeah, 100%. So a couple things on that, right? Like the people that brag, unfortunately, are usually the least competent. I've gone even early on in my career. I went on, went behind a lot of guys that boasted a lot about their certifications and this and that, and they couldn't, hardly do anything. But yeah, I mean, it's very much what you said. Just again, me as an example. The last job I had before I decided to start my company, I mean, I literally went there with the mentality like, oh, this is a big company. I can just hide. I can do my work. I can go home for the day. I don't have to get into anything big. I could just collect a paycheck. And again, through the natural progression of me just trying to get my job done, I ended up being like one of the, I don't know, maybe three go-to guys that they had. But again, I never wanted to be. I wasn't, going to shy away from it when it came up, but I'm like, dude, I'm just here doing my job, trying to do the best I can. Yeah, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yep, yep. I got two questions I want to ask you about pressure, and then I think we got some questions from the audience that I want to make sure we get to.
All right.
But first question is around like crisis mode. So when I was talking about this Superman thing a second ago, the guys in this industry that are at the top of their game, it seems time and again what I hear is, man, they have got to be great in a crisis.
Mhm.
What is like right now, let's have you address some of the younger guys that maybe aren't quite there yet. In a full blown crisis situation, what's something that you would advise techs to think about or do first?
Most important thing I tell people when you're in a crisis situation, regardless of what it is out in the field, is have a freaking poker face. You know what I mean? Never look like you're not in control. As long as you look like you're in control, even if you're not, you can keep most of this situation calm. You can, work through most of it. I mean, I've, screwed up and had a fireball almost hit me right in the face, and I just stayed stone faced. The customer freaked out for a second. I'm like, okay, and I told him, I said, okay, cool. So now we know gas is going to that part of the unit. Shut it down, and kept going, and everybody just chilled. You know what I mean? In my head, I was like, holy crap, that could have been bad. But yeah, it's just learn to master. First you master your expressions, then learn to master your emotions, and as long as you can do that, you can keep the situation around you calm. You keep yourself calm more or less, and then you can just work your way out of it. And whenever you're in a situation like that, just go back to the basics. You know what I mean? You're freaking out, you don't know what's going on. Start at square one and then work your way to a solution.
It's not a connection that I think outsiders would necessarily make. I bet that you will agree, though. One of the from a mentality standpoint, professions that you guys have a lot in common with is emergency room doctors. In terms of needing to quickly make calls in a high pressure important environment, and having been to an emergency room myself, had a motorcycle accident a few years ago. I will tell you, the last thing you want to hear from a doctor is "oh shit."
Yeah,
Like you want to feel, even if he's thinking it, bro, think it on the inside.
yeah, exactly.
But like you don't want to hear that the person who now has your business in their hands
Mhm.
is looking at this and saying, "Damn, bro,"
Yeah.
like poker face, poker face, poker face. Um, so now let's look at pressure from the other side. That's doing it right. What are some of the mistakes you see younger guys making in these high pressure environments? Like, hey, so it's almost like the reverse side of the coin of what you were just talking about. Guys, you got to stop doing X, Y, and Z.
Um, the most common thing that I see is just people getting in their own head. I mean, and it's kind of just, you know, rephrasing what I was saying earlier, but, you know, you see a high pressure situation and you start to think, well, I don't have enough experience for this. I've never worked on this before, whatever. And then you start working yourself up to a place where you can't solve the problem because you won't get out of your own way.
Yeah, I heard HVAC company owner say just yesterday, we want guys to stay there and troubleshoot the problem until the problem is solved. Like you got to stick with it, and you got to figure it out. And it's interesting to hear you talk about, and I hope the guys at home are picking up on this. A lot of the things you're talking about are mentality related
Mhm.
things. These are not necessarily the hard skills. These are the like you said, poker face to make the client feel confident, and then just kind of get out of your own head. You
Yeah.
got this. This is a solvable problem.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly believe that this is 99% mentality. The technical skills are fairly easy to be taught, right? I mean, in reality, I can have a new guy on the phone with me and I can walk him through how to do everything technically. And I've done that before. I mean, I've taught people refrigeration over the phone, believe it or not. But if you can't get out of your head, there's nothing I can do for you. I can literally tell you, take your meter, put it on this setting. Okay, take the one lead, put it here. Take the other one. Okay, what does it say on your meter? Okay, what is your, this is how you check amperage. This is how you check pressures. What does your pressure say? I can walk you through all that, I can use the information you give me to help you diagnose the unit. But if you're on the line panicking and freaking out, there's literally nothing in the world I can do to help you.
Totally. Yeah. Um, let's take a few questions from the audience. Susie, what do you got for us?
Let's start with Jared from Nashville. And he says, I work on restaurant equipment too, and one thing that drives me nuts is when kitchen staff swear it just stopped working, but you can tell it's been ignored for months. How do you deal with customers who clearly cause a problem but don't want to hear it?
So, Rich, for people of a certain generation, so I'll be 47 this May. This is almost like that Tommy Boy moment, where he rips off the door to the car, Chris Farley, and then he puts it back on,
Mhm.
and David Spade like touches the door and he falls off. He said, "What'd you do?"
Yeah.
Like that sort of comes to mind here. I mean, this happens all the time. I think every guy on earth has done this to their friend to some extent.
Right.
But professionally speaking, it's probably a bit more annoying. What's been your observation?
I mean, if that guy that asked that question was in front of me right now, I would tell him it's none of your business. It doesn't matter when it broke. It doesn't matter why it broke. It doesn't matter who broke it, other than, you want to educate them on maybe neglect or misuse or something like that. Years ago, I used to get very irritated, and I still do now. Don't get me wrong, but you would get an emergency call on a walk-in freezer at 5, 6 o'clock at night. You would get there and it's completely frozen, and all the in the evaporator, the product's all thawed out, and you'd be pissed because you're like, this started at 8 a.m. this morning. Why didn't you call it then? But I seen a video from I think it's Chris Stevens HVACR videos, and he was saying in a video, don't ask the customer when the problem started. That's not for you to worry about. If you do, you're going to get pissed off because of, like what he said. You knew that problem's been going on for 3 days, and they tell you it started right when they called you. So don't worry about when it started, other than for informational purposes and for it to help you troubleshooting. But aside from that, I mean, it's none of your business when it started. What is your business is what's going on, and the fact that you're there to fix it, to just deal with that and get the job done.
Love it. Susie, what else you got for us?
Hey Ryan, this is Paul down in Arkansas. I'm about to start my own service shop, and what's got me nervous is bringing new guys up. When you're a small crew and already buried in calls, how do you train somebody without it slowing the whole shop down?
So, Rich, one of the things that we hear a lot is exactly this. Like, people are trying to figure out how to ramp younger techs faster. And I mentioned a second ago, like, they really want the tech to troubleshoot the issue until it's resolved. But often, that involves getting on the phone with older techs. And that seems to be a kind of a point of frustration. I'm curious how, like, how have you seen that solved effectively?
One of the things I think people need to understand, besides just the tools that are out there and the technology, yeah, this is where we're at in the blue collar world. So what you need to do is figure out how to adapt your business to be able to take on that extra burden of training, the slowdown in calls. And as much as a lot of people don't like to hear this, you need to charge accordingly. You know what I mean? What we charge customers needs to be based on our overall operational costs. And if we're at a place where we have to have 2 or 3 guys training repeatedly or regularly, I should say, we need to factor that into our overall operating cost, and we just need to charge accordingly. We need to stop trying to, a lot of service companies, what they'll do is they'll set a rate and then they'll try to work backwards, and how can we make this rate work for the customer, when what we need to do is say, okay, this is what it costs us, so this is what we need to charge, end of story. And then if everybody does that, it makes it a whole lot easier because all of our rates are in line.
This episode is brought to you by FieldMind, built for the hands that keep America running. FieldMind gives your field service techs ready access to technical documentation, service history, and your team's best tribal knowledge right where they are, in the field. FieldMind is the tool for field service techs. Learn more at fieldmind.com. This show brought to you by FieldMind. But regarding like doing it the old school way, training up young guys, like this is a problem that goes back to cavemen. I'm guessing, like the first guy made fire. Now you got this young caveman, needs to be trained up on how to make fire. How, for these smaller shops that are intimidated about bringing in younger guys, like what are some, I don't know, what are 2 or 3 tips that you've seen work really well to build a system that isn't just calling the senior techs for developing young talent? Like, what are two or three, I don't know, tips you would have for small shops out there? I imagine this is a thing a thing a thing or two about.
Yeah, so it's hard, right? And it's again, to me, it's going to go back to mindset, like we were talking about with the actual being in the field. You've got to understand what it takes and what it costs to train people. And if you want guys to be good and you just want like how do I get a guy from zero to decent, you're going to have to figure how to cover anywhere from 3 months to 6 months minimum of him riding around every day with a senior tech and slowing down the senior tech, hurting your production, then your other guys having to pick up the slack. I mean, I don't think there's a way to go about it that most shops are willing to accept. You get what I mean? Like they want to know how can we do
Mm-hmm.
this without having to pay any extra money, without taking a loss, without having to give more overtime. And there's not a way to do that unless you do what a lot of companies call, the warm body method or the capture the call. And let me send a guy that doesn't know jack about what he's doing, but at least we showed up. And then we can send a senior guy behind him when he has time to make everything right, which to me, that's a very crappy model. Screws over the customer, screws over the new technician, because if you keep sending technicians out that are brand new, they don't know anything, they're not accomplishing anything, they're going to end up leaving the industry, because part of doing this is the feeling of accomplishment at the end of the job. So for me, like I said, I don't believe there's an answer. And I get this because I talk to a lot of small business owners. I mean, I'm in a cool area
Mm-hmm.
where I talk to guys that are doing 10, $15 million a year in revenue. I talk to guys that are doing a couple $100,000 a year in revenue. And a lot of the smaller guys, especially, don't want to accept that there's not a way to bring new people in that is not going to hurt you financially for several months.
Mm-hmm. By the way, it occurs to me I'm going to go back to something you said a second ago. I've got a business idea. The Rich Ortega and Ryan Prosser YouTube channel for entry level techs called Zero to Decent. I love
I like that. I like
I
that.
love it, dude, because that really is, what it is in those early days. It's like we're not going to take you from zero to hero.
Right.
You got to do that yourself over 20 years.
Right.
We're going to take you from zero to decent. We're going to
Exactly.
take you from zero to not horrible.
Exactly.
Um, and I think that is kind of what intimidates the business owners. But last question for you, Rich. We've kept you too long today, but thinking back on your career, I see for folks listening at home, Rich has a very young voice, but there's a bit of gray in that beard, I will say. And I will tell you, when I grow mine out, it looks exactly the same. Um, and so I spend a bit of time thinking of, back on my career, and I'm curious, as you think back on yours, what's a moment? It's obvious you take a lot of pride in what you do, and you take a lot of pride in helping other people that are trying to come up in the game. What's something recently that you can point at that said, "Man, this is why I do what I do"?
Oh man, honestly, the state that I'm in right now, it's almost a regular thing that I'm seeing, and it has to do with the fact that we're taking over a lot of big accounts in our area, and we can actually, not just that we can tell, but we've been told that we're making at least the repair side of our customers' businesses easier. You know what I mean? Like customers will tell us, we love the fact that once we call you once, we don't have to worry about what's going on anymore. We know that when you guys walk in the door, our problem's going to be taken care of. And you could see a lot of relief off of people's face. And that is honestly, for me, the biggest thing that I'm like, yeah, this is why I keep doing this stuff. You know what I mean? Like you walk into a restaurant and their dining room is 100 degrees in the summer because the AC is not working, and you know you go out of your way. You might spend all day on the job, but you're able to get the part they need locally, do the work, have them running before dinner time, and the manager's like, "Thank you. I don't know what we would have done if you didn't get our AC working, or I don't know what we would have lost 20 grand if you didn't get our freezer working, or we would have had to shut down if you guys couldn't fix that gas leak." That's really the reason why, or that's what makes me look at like, yeah, this is why I do this.
I mean, the ability to make things colder. I think if people think about it for even 2 seconds, it's probably the closest to black magic that humanity has discovered. You know, I mean, wait, so you can make something I think hotter, I understand. You rub sticks together, you make
Right.
fire, whatever the case, jump up and down, you get hot. The ability to make things colder. I really believe this is the closest to black magic that we as humans have discovered. And so you guys out on the front lines, are kind of the closest to real life magicians that we'll ever know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's I like to tell I like to tell my guys, and I like to tell people, you know, we're not just fixing stuff, we're changing people's lives, but the way we do it is by fixing stuff. You know what I mean? Like I tell people, I'm like, you're not just fixing a deep fryer. You're helping a restaurant make money, which means their staff is staying employed, which means their staff can go home and pay their bills, which means that, parents can bring their kids for, hamburgers today or whatever and create family moments. I'm like, there's a lot of impact that we have. The way we do it is by fixing stuff. I'm like, but stop it. Don't ever think all you do is fix stuff.
Perfect, man. Let's wrap it there. So that is a wrap for today. And Rich, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, man. Thank y'all for having me.
And thank you for listening. Join us next time as we meet with another frontline tradesman out there keeping America running. Thanks for listening to The Dispatch. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with a friend in the field.